All right, so this is an introduction for those of you who have never used the Thesis Generator before. I'm going to keep this introduction pretty generic so that it can be used by either English 101 or 102 or College Prep 12 or even AP Lang if you have it. So this handout was created by a really, really smart English teacher out in California named Jim Burke, and he's got accreditation at the bottom of the handout right here. And basically Jim Burke takes the mystery out of how you create a thesis. And so it becomes a 4-step process that he helps you understand by giving you a sample paper topic up here to look at and then walking you through how a student might do that in his classroom. So first of all, as you get older and into college, there's no guarantee that your teacher is going to tell you exactly what your papers are about. Sometimes they're just going to say, write a paper. And when that happens, you might feel lost. But if you have this 4-step thesis generator process in your mind, then hopefully you're not going to feel as lost. So the first thing that you're going to do is identify the subject matter of your paper. For some of you, you already know what your subject matter is because you've made that selection. For others, you've been told what it is that you've been studying in terms of research topic, and so you know what the subject matter of your paper is. Once you know the subject matter of your paper, then you have to turn that subject matter into a guiding question. Again, some of you already know what your guiding question is. If you're in College Prep English 12, you know what your guiding question is. If you're in English 102 doing this for your research paper, you know what your guiding question is. English 101, if you're using this for the synthesis essay in December, then you are going to have to write an essential question, but you can dig into what we talked about earlier on in this year, and you know what to do and how to do that. So for this particular sample student, the subject matter of their paper is going to be about relationships between teenagers and their parents. And so they turn this into the guiding question, is what Jim Burke calls it, essential question, same thing. How does the relationship between teenagers and their parents change? Step 3, you just give your gut response to that question. So however you would answer that as straightforwardly as possible. So this student wrote, as teens grow more independent, they resent and resist the limitations and expectations their parents impose upon them. That's not inherently a bad sentence. There's nothing wrong with it, but we want to remember that the thesis statement is like the roadmap to the rest of our paper. So we are essentially crafting the organization of our paper and laying it out for the people who are reading it, and generally speaking, using that thesis statement quite oftentimes in the introduction. So we want to make sure that we follow step 4. Step 4 is the most important part of this whole process. On your own papers, I would put a star next to step 4 because step 4 is the key. You are going to be then refining this thesis statement that you just made in 3 into a working thesis. So 2 things I want to point out here. When you refine something, it means that you're perfecting it. So think about how when we refine gold, we boil it down until we get all the impurities out of it. So that's what you're going to be doing with your language here. And the way that you refine your thesis statement is by playing around with your words. So you try different vocabulary, you try different sentence patterns, you play around with what exactly it is that you think that you want to say. And my advice to all of you is that at a minimum, you try your thesis statement 3 different ways. When I was writing papers in college, honestly, I would try it 5 to 7. That's maybe a bit excessive for you guys, but I do think that 3 isn't a reasonable amount. 3 different versions of this sentence will help you make a decision about which one is best. And maybe you'll find that the very first sentence that you wrote is exactly what you need. Great. Now you can prove it because you've tried it 2 other ways and you don't like it. Or maybe you find out that your last sentence is your best one. Or maybe it's your middle sentence. Whatever, at least you can be solid that you know, based off of comparison to other ways that you've done it, that this one is the absolute best. So this is the way that the student refined the idea that was given above. I'm going to read it to you, and then I'm going to show you how this is basically the roadmap for the student's paper. Conflict between teenagers and their parents is a difficult but necessary stage in kids' development. This is different than what we have up here, right? It has some similarities to it, but what I really like about this one is that it sets up the organization of the paper. So the first thing that I'm going to do is probably grab somebody's attention by either giving an example of a conflict between teenagers and their parents, maybe even using a personal example if you've got one at the ready, or maybe giving some statistics about that. So we're going to set up the idea that there is this tension between parents and teenagers. Then I'm going to talk about how this is difficult. It's difficult on the kids, it's difficult on the parents, and I would possibly even give a paragraph to each group. Like, here's why it's hard on the teenagers, here's why it's hard on the parents. Strong transition here because we're about to contradict it, right? We have a but. So I want to make sure that there my line of reasoning is really clear, that even though it kind of stinks and it hurts to have this conflict, it's something that's really necessary for kids. This is something that they need, and the reason why they need it is it develops them, right? So it leads to a period of growth when they are in some of those conflicts with their parents over decisions, over responsibilities, over, desire for independence, those sorts of things. So that ultimately we're talking about this conflict between parents and their kids as being the way that we become adults, right? So this is the roadmap for the paper. That's the point of the thesis statement. What you have in the rest of the worksheet is just space for you to be able to do exactly what it is. So you can write your subject here, your essential question here, your first idea that comes out of your brain here. And then this is probably not enough room for you to actually practice refining your thesis statement 3 different ways. So feel free to just flip that worksheet over or do it on a piece of scratch paper if you like to have the lines. But I will be expecting that you have a couple different versions of this sentence ready to go, so that if I have a conversation with you about your thesis statement, and if I don't feel like it's the best one possible, I might say, pull out that paper and let's look at it together and see if maybe you've phrased it better, in one of the other options. So if you have major questions about how to use this Thesis Generator worksheet, please let me know. Otherwise, go ahead and put it into practice.